Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to all our guests from Manila to Cebu and Singapore to Switzerland. Thank you for joining Manila Angel Investors Network on Zoom and live on Facebook. The link to the chat, the link to this broadcast should be in the chat. So if you'd like to invite your friends to join us on Facebook Live, please do so. Be great for them to catch up. My name is Joseph De Leon, one of the founding members of Maine, and on behalf of Manila Angel Investors Network, it is my privilege to welcome you to our first online startup collaboration, Making Philippine Farming Pandemic Proof. Today, we're going to be zooming in on the Philippines agri-tech sector, but we actually hope this dialogue will inspire insights on how individuals, institutions, founders, and funders all over might actually tackle this global pandemic together. As the Philippines' largest and most active investor network, normally we host pitch events to support our country's startup ecosystem by connecting great startups to mentors, market, and most importantly, money. But today is a little bit different. This is not a pitch event, not a demo day. The featured startups here aren't here because of their investability. We've invited this panel primarily because they have a unique perspective relevant for future proofing our food supply for a post-COVID world. This evening, each of the startups will be sharing their inspiring initiatives, and that will be followed by an exciting panel moderated by one of our members, Mr. Coy Navarro of ADB Ventures. As you're all probably aware, ADB Ventures is a $60 million impact VC fund housed within the Asian Development Bank. And prior to ADB Ventures, Koy has been a consultant for ADB and other international organizations like USAID and the Private Financing Advisory Network. And he is himself a founder of two e-mobility startups. So we will also love to tackle some questions from the audience. So you can submit your questions via the Zoom questions and answer tab or via the Facebook Live comment section. Without further ado, here are our startups for the evening. First, we have Aug20 PH, a full cycle value chain solution for small landholder cooperatives and associations. We'd like to play a short video so that you can see what they're all about. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Henry James Season, and I'm the founder and chief farming officer at Aug20 PH. We are in the business of raising farmers' incomes through virtual aggregation. We're more than a marketplace. We do not put a margin on top of goods that are sold through our platform. Likewise, we focus on business-to-business transactions as opposed to most in the market who focus on final mile deliveries. More importantly, we are an ERP utility and a service for organized farming clusters. At the end of the day, we would like to create a network of cooperatives and associations to further optimize the food value chain. We choose to focus on organized farmers as they can aggregate demand and consequently synchronize production activities. This enables groups of farmers to consistently provide supply and create leverage when negotiating prices. We want our farmers to really sell produce at responsive volumes and at a stable price. This we do for some 9 million Filipino farmers who continue to live below the poverty line. Our minimum viable product is the quickest way for farmers to monetize their produce. As soon as farmers are organized into clusters, we link them to the market using our marketplace and community pages. Confirmed orders go through our production management module to synchronize production activities. As soon as harvest time comes, they are aggregated, then delivered directly to our clients. To date, we have around 84 farmer groups in various stages of adoption. Since we went on open beta in July of 2019, our solution has been validated multiple times through production aggregation activities, as well as proof of income pilots. Perhaps our most telling story is how we fared during COVID quarantine. That is, from mid-March through end June, we moved some 420 tons of various produce to the tune of around 16.2 million pesos. Our business model revolves around two income streams. monthly subscriptions, as well as farmer business services, which serve to bridge the gap between the status quo and digital adoption. We're two people on the team. I have 25 years of experience in IT and almost a decade in agriculture. Ken, on the other hand, has a decade worth of experience in IT and is the brains behind AgroDigital. In summary, we continue to drive demand as it spurs our farming clusters to continue production. More importantly, we are on track to onboarding another 45 farming clusters by the end of the year, raising our managed clusters to around 135. Finally, we will leverage farmer business services to ensure that we continue to be viable while we continue to push for adoption. Again, we are AgroDigital PH. We are ready to scale.
Next, we'd like to introduce Agraba Ventures, who provides a steady market channel for farmers and fisher folks through their online platform. Let's look at their video.
Hi, I'm Jojo Gumino Okol, co-founder and CEO of Agraba Ventures, where we're more than just a platform, we build communities. Agraba has a collective and collaborative approach to completing the agriculture value chain by means of Bayanihan. We believe that working together instead of against each other can foster win-win situations for all along the value chain. So, what do we offer at Agraba? Our flagship product is Aug20, a managed service provider platform that provides improved efficiencies in agricultural trade, trading, financing, and logistics. Simply stated, Aug20 helps farmers connect directly to large-scale institutional buyers. Agraba Logistics leverages existing relationships with our partner logistics companies to help move agricultural goods from point to point. Our main advantage is in the way we ship agricultural goods. We utilize a system that lowers the logistical costs by 50%. In this product, Bayanihan shines through as we help our logistics partners reduce underutilized resources, generate more sales, while also helping farmers who are in need of transportation coordination for their goods on a budget, ensuring a win-win situation for both sides. Agrava Finance was created out of the needs of our farmers to continue to maintain their cropping cycles. They faced challenges previously because the institutional buyers pay 15 to 30 days after the delivery. We help provide our farmers with financing through the help of our partner banks. With trade financing, our farmers can now continuously grow their farm production while the banks are confident that they'll get paid back. Agraba helps mitigate the risk banks take on the farmers because we ensure the crops are already sold before they even get harvested, since Agraba is the facilitator of the trade between farmers and institutional buyers. Again, this is another really great example of our win-win solution for both sides, banking and farming. They say teamwork makes the dream work, and Agraba's team is no exception. Although we all come from different sectors and walks of life, our collective experiences have helped shape Agraba into what it has become today, each with our own expertise, strengthening the team overall. And our mentors and advisors are comprised of experts in government, private sector, and agriculture. Their collective knowledge also uplifts our efforts when we face challenges and need advice. We're also supported by the Data Banatao Incubator at the Asian Institute of Management. Their support and guidance through the years have seen us grow exponentially so that we're able to confidently lead, transform, and inspire others to make a difference in the lives of our hardworking farmers and fisher folks. Agrabah is on a mission to make agriculture great again here in the Philippines through Bayanihan, because we know that the grass is always greener where you water it.
Our next featured startup is Insight SCS, a technology logistics company creating a single supply chain platform with blockchain proof of delivery. Let's look at their video.
Good day. My name is Pierre and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Insight SES. Insight SES is a tech logistics startup that uses future technology like blockchain, Internet of Things, data analytics to drive innovation in any supply chain. Let's start with the problem. Because of the fragmented and complex nature of our local agriculture supply chain, it generates a lot of food waste, higher costs, lower quality, and lesser revenues for our farmers. This problem was mostly highlighted during the pandemic where the supply chain was broken and farmers were forced to throw away the produce they worked hard for. Our solution is to organize and synchronize all of the different parties along the value chain in a single digital agriculture supply chain platform. This will drive efficiencies that generates higher revenues for the farmer, generate cost savings for the different stakeholders, and provide fresher produce to consumers. Our solution is a fully running end-to-end platform that covers e-commerce, order management, smart procurement, inventory and warehouse management, and delivery management. All of this powered by our blockchain-proof delivery for secure visibility along the supply chain. We are working closely with USAID, the Department of Agriculture, and the Department of Trade and Industry to launch what we call the Delivery Initiative, powered by Insight SES. The initiative integrates all of the supply chain participants from the farmer, co-ops, traders, transporters, processors, wholesalers, retailers, and e-commerce shops. It also integrates the digital payments and trade finance. This allows collaboration that simplifies the supply chain and generates the benefits stated earlier. We started a proof of concept last April, and it generated 4,800 orders, 153 tons moved, 2,800 customers. Also, with the direct link of the farmer to the customer, it increased the revenue by 100%. We also drastically reduced post-harvest waste from 50 to 10%. We also donated 2,000 kilos of vegetables to hospitals for frontliners and communities needing support, and a total of $93,000 worth of total orders. And because of this success, USAID heavily featured the initiative alongside major news media outlets, a strong validation of the strength of the solution and the initiative. Going to our business model, we know everything will go online, and farm to fork will really be the new normal. 107 million population, 360,000 metric tons of vegetables delivered to Metro Manila, which translates to $360 million. We're looking at a revenue model of a platform fee of 2% with an annual potential revenue of $7.2 million. In the same platform, with the help of DA and DTI, we will onboard institutional buyers, food processors, large retailers, which comprise the majority of the agricultural supply chain. Moreover, we can replicate the same solution to other countries that has the same ecosystem as ours. We have a strong team with over 100 years of cumulative experience in supply chain, logistics management, and technology developed specific to the industry. We're raising $500,000 for 20% equity to expand our sales and marketing team, and at the same time continue to develop the next phase of our technology. To sum up, we are backed by a very strong team, have strong government support, and with international development partner, high potential market, product market fit, enterprise client validation, and revenue generated. We're looking for a partner to help us scale faster. Thank you very much.
Our next startup of the evening is Tagani, a farm franchising company that builds controlled environment farms and is focused on making it a viable investment for overseas Filipino workers. Roll VTR.
Hi everyone, my name is Kev, and today I'm going to present about our company, which is Tagani. You know what? Here in Metro Manila, there are about 450 Korean restaurants. And prior to the lockdowns, they would have an average demand of 200 kilograms of lettuce per week. Multiply that by 52 weeks, that will be around 4,700 metric tons of lettuce annually. But our country can only produce around 3,600 metric tons per year. And take note that only 48% goes to Metro Manila. So there's a wide supply and demand gap in terms of lettuce production here in our country as a whole. And as an opportunity, we saw that there are 40,000 aspiring agribusiness entrepreneurs in the Tagani community alone. There are former OFWs or successors of farmlands, but they don't know how to manage or start their own farms. So using this opportunity, we started our company. Tagani is a farm franchising platform, a hyper-local supply chain that helps people start their own farms through a farm franchising model. We help people start their own farms, build them, and then provide technical support as well as help them market their produce to restaurants, grocery stores, and supermarkets. At a price of 3.2 million for 600 square meters, you can have a farm that's complete for operations and already with equipment, tools, and everything that you will need as a plug-and-play farm. Our partners and supporters include Go Negosyo Digital Alliance, the United States Department of State, the U.S. Mission to ASEAN, the Department of Agriculture, the University of the Philippines. We are also part of the AIM Dado Banato Incubator and also the Globe Telecom Communities. Over the years, we have won awards and recognition. Actually, last year we were awarded as one of the top 100 startups in Asia Pacific, among other awards that we have received over the years. Right now, we're also developing our own agribusiness resource assessment tool and mapping software that would allow our agriculturists to collect data and analyze and provide recommendations automatically whenever they go to the site, and then so that we could provide sound recommendations for our clients. Help us start the future of agribusiness. Let's feed the people. Let's grow together. Thank you.
Last but not least, we have Zagana, a farm-to-kitchen platform that does 30-minute delivery within Metro Manila for fresh produce.
Hi everyone, I'm Josh, founder of Zagana.com. We are a farm-to-kitchen platform that does fresh produce delivery in 30 minutes within Metro Manila. Our aim is to create prosperity for all by uplifting our farmers' lives through transparent and fair pricing, providing access to safe and healthy, affordable produce to our end users. And with this, we are here to fix the supply chain for agriculture. Our focus is to increase the yield for harvest while decreasing the costs for delivery. The team is composed of industry experts in the field of e-commerce, fulfillment, which is me and Steve, Department of Agriculture, Sir Bong, Storage and Logistics, Sir Aldrin and Sir Paul. So how do we do the 30 minutes delivery? We source directly from our partner farmers who are the magsasaka, mangingisda, and the poultry growers. The produce are then consolidated to our hubs where we clean and sort the produce. This is then shipped to our micro-fulfillment centers in Metro Manila and delivered within 30 minutes to our end users, who are the households, NGOs, and corporates. Our store channels not just include Zagana.com, but also GrabMart, Foodpanda, Lazada, Shopee, Community Mart, and Picaru. We are heavily supported by our industry partners such as the DA, DTI, and USAID. These photos includes our MOA signing with SecDAR of the DA for Ikadiwa, our trip to the farm with the farmer cooperatives, which comprises of 300 to 3,000 farmers. Since COVID happened, we've helped 8,000 farmers, moved 170,000 kilos of produce, and fed 70,000 households. We are here to provide food security. Let's help feed our nation. Thank you.
Now that we've had a look at all of our startup panelists, what we've all been waiting for, it is my privilege to hand over the mic to my good friend, Coy Navarro.
Thanks, Joseph. I'm trying out my video here. I hope everyone can see me. So good evening, good afternoon, good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us. So what I'm going to do is just introduce each of the panelists. And as I do that, I'd like to invite each panelist to please turn on your video if possible. I think it would be great to see everyone while we're having this discussion. So our first startup is Aug20 PH. It is being represented by Henry James Season, who is the founder and chief farming officer of Aug20 PH. Henry is an IT professional with 25 years of experience. For him, farming is a passion and a second career. On January 2018, he drafted a digital roadmap for small and medium agri-enterprises, which led to Aug20 PH, a full-cycle value chain solution for virtually aggregating small landholder cooperatives and associations. So Henry, there you go. Next, joining me is Jojo, co-founder and COO of Agraba Ventures, which is based in Naga, Bicol. Jojo is an active member of the startup community and has over a decade of experience as a seasoned human resource and business professional with varied experiences across industries and cultures. She has lived, worked in several countries and expecting their second child. Congratulations, Jojo, and good luck. There you go. Hi, Jojo. Insight SCS. It's being represented by Pierre Coray, who is the co-founder and CEO. He has a passion in solving problems and has over 19 years of experience as an entrepreneur and 13 years in logistics and supply chain management. He is currently the president-elect of the Supply Chain Management Association of the Philippines and is a pioneer mentor for the ASEAN Mentorship for Entrepreneurs Network. Welcome, Pierre. Next is Tagani, who is represented by Keb Cuevas. Keb is an award-winning agriculture advocate, agribusiness economist, and digital agriculturist. Keb received the U.S. Department of State's YSEALI Academic Fellowship Award for Social Entrepreneurship back in 2018, and has recently been designated as Grow ASEAN Executive Director, a digital agricultural fellowship program in partnership with the U.S. Mission to ASEAN. Welcome, Keb. And finally, Zagana is represented by Joshua Aragon, who is the founder and CEO. Josh has an ability to build high-performance teams, including a strategically selected executive management staff. He has served as both catalyst and infused productive energy in the workplace. He currently serves as a board of director in the Philippine Red Cross Quezon City chapter, providing relief operations and mass blood donations. So welcome, everybody. So obviously, all these startups are doing interesting work, but unfortunately, given the time we have, I don't think we'll be able to dive deep into each of your business models, et cetera, et cetera. So instead of doing that, what I wanted to take away from this discussion is just to, get an idea, since you're on the front lines, of what are the emerging trends in this sector now that we're in the middle of a lockdown, which just started today again for 2 weeks, right? And I think the silver lining here is this whole experience, it revealed what is essential to everybody and where the value sits. And I just want to hear from each one of you what that value is in terms of your business or maybe your supply chain partners. What areas of value can we sort of build a strong business in as a country? And it would be interesting to know what are the growth prospects of that of those value chains after the lockdown, post-pandemic. Will that persist? So just your general views on this would be very interesting. So maybe let's start with the same order that I introduced you. Let me call Henry first for his comments.
All right. Yeah. So good evening, everybody. So definitely this pandemic has actually forced people to be a bit more creative in terms of taking a look at what can be done to to basically recover from the disruption of the supply chain, right? So given the quarantine, a lot of people have been looking at e-commerce as fulfillment for final mile for supply, right? For end user supply. But having said that, there are systemic problems that have been in place or has been there even before COVID, right? If you take a look at, for instance, how farmers actually get paid for their produce, it's very inconsistent. It's the way that middlemen, for instance, would happen to squeeze farmers, right, and manipulate the system is very obvious. So basically what we're saying is that there's a lot of potential in terms of trying to iron out how the supply chain is working out. There's a lot of optimization that needs to be done. And likewise, there's a lot of coordination, right? I don't think farmers themselves actually talk to each other. We can easily take a look at, the prices of tomatoes, for instance. It's 5 pesos a kilogram for the past 2 weeks since April. I think it's late May to early or mid June, and then all of a sudden it's 40 pesos now. If farmers happen to coordinate their production activities, they can actually smoothen out the production such that they can stabilize the prices. Again, the question of whether this should persist, if these are still viable, definitely it will be viable beyond COVID because there are systemic problems in the system that needs correction.
Thank you, and I definitely agree. If farmers have a broader understanding of what the demand is in the next few months, right, they can plan their planting cycles, their harvesting cycles. So you indirectly reduce wastage, optimize logistics, and I think to a great extent that's what Agro Digital is
That's right.
doing.
That's
right?
the space that we play. Correct.
Excellent. Now let's hear from Jojo from Agraba Ventures. In your experience, what are the emerging value centers coming out of this pandemic?
Well, I also agree with Henry when it comes to the fact that there are a lot of different things that are a consistent, unstable situation along the value chain. For us in Agribah, what we try to do is we try to continue to stabilize things for our farmers. And in doing that, we've actually kind of, how do we say this? It's like we COVID-proofed before COVID actually happened. So even though a lot of things were happening for farmers that may not have had, secured clients before the lockdowns, for our farmers, they were still consistently supplying the needs of our enterprise clients. So they, although maybe parts of their communities were having difficulties, the farmers that we support were still having a stabilized income. The things that we kind of saw around the epidemic was that a lot of the difficulties that were faced for the farmers that we help actually revolved around the logistics of getting their produce from point to point, especially because of all of the different strategies of the LGUs and the national government about who has to be quarantined and things like that. And for us, that was kind of where we realized that the logistics part of our platform is really important to help stabilize again for our farmers. So for us, we see a lot of value when it comes to the different gaps in the value chain. But there are just so many different parts that could be fixed that we are consistently a believer of Bayanihan. So working together, even with some of the other panelists today, we actually work with them. So yeah, for us, it's really more of a realization or an awakening that working together is really kind of key when it comes to uplifting farmers and fisher folks, even past the pandemic.
Right, logistics. Maybe we can add some nuance there, if you don't mind, Jojo, because I mean, obviously, synchronizing agricultural supply with demand, maybe in intercity, in between cities, so long distances, right? And ideally, you want to do mass transport so that the unit cost is lower. So can you speak a little bit about how you optimize logistics in terms of Agribah?
Sure. So for us, when we talk about enterprise clients, we actually work in large scale. So the types of purchase orders that we get, they're already in metric tons, which means that, for example, in seaweed, when we do a delivery of around 15 to 25 metric tons, we're actually helping over 500 farmers in one delivery. So for us, what we do in terms of coordinating the logistics, not only aggregating the supply in one place, but making sure that the quality is there before it even gets to the delivery point. So instead of all of the smaller shareholder farmers having to figure out how to get their goods from point to point, they just have to go to one place to drop off their goods. And when we aggregate it as a whole in terms of their communities, then that's the time that we coordinate the logistics with our logistics partners. So on that front, though, it actually also helps the logistics partners because a lot of the times they may be going from point to point and one of their trips is going to be empty. So we actually utilize that empty load to help our farmers, and it actually reduces costs for them.
I see. So you do not necessarily own your own fleet. You have logistics partners, and you provide the data to sort of optimize the delivery. Excellent.
Yeah. It's more on the coordination of things versus having to reinvent the wheel and start something like our own logistics company.
Right. Cool. Thanks, Jojo. So maybe let's hear from Pierre from Insight SES next. Sorry, Pierre, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
There you go. No problem.
I agree with the panelists. It's all about collaboration, and it's all about sharing information along the supply chain. Like what I said earlier, our agriculture supply chain is very traditional. I came from the logistics industry, particularly more on the multinational front, FMCG front. So I see a lot of the efficiencies there that they've already made, because for them, supply chain is a very crucial part of their business. So, and when I looked at agriculture, agriculture is very fragmented. Katulad nga sabi ni Sir Henry is that even the farmers are not talking to each other, just managing the demand and managing the supply. And the future will be is really bringing that type of efficiency, bringing that type of collaboration, and bringing that type of information sharing along the supply chain will bring that cost savings, lesser waste, and all of the things that will make our supply chain more efficient. Cut down on shorten the supply chain per se. Parang ganun.
Interesting. So, to your point on coordination, greater collaboration. So I just want to pick your brain on how you think we should sort of segment the different stakeholders in the space. So there are startups doing demand aggregation. There are startups, aggregating supply. There are probably logistics companies. Some companies, chief among the people in the panel itself, cut across all these value chains. But can you sort of help me piece together what are the different components that need to be integrated efficiently?
Well, in a supply chain, to generate that kind of efficiency, you have to have full collaboration and integration of all the different players. For example, the farmers, the farmer co-ops, traders, first mile transporters, consolidation hubs, and then of course when you get to the other end, up to the consumer, the last mile providers. So the greater the integration and collaboration, it will generate that much more savings. So we've realized that in the FMCG space. So we understand that if you know, it's just an example. Whenever you go to Starbucks, whenever you go to the supermarket, right? Although now I think it's closed because of the GCU, but every time you order, it's always there. There's not a time that it's not there. Even at Jollibee, even at McDonald's, when you order something, it's there. We've already expected that, and that's all about supply chain. And these supply chains are very integrated. Even the suppliers, even the at the point of third level suppliers, they know their supply chain, and then they optimize that. Everybody shares that information, and that's our experience as a transporter for these FMCGs. We know at each point of the supply when it will arrive, when it will get delivered, when it's going to be manufactured. So that's something that we need to have, and all of these different segments collaborating will bring that type of efficiency in the agriculture supply chain.
Thanks, Pierre. And maybe one more thing. I think I saw in your presentation that you picked up on food waste, reducing waste. That would be your presentation, right, Pierre? Because things went through very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the because we noticed that not only here but emerging markets, food waste is really high. It's average around 30 to 50% from post harvest. So because I always give this an example. When I went to La Trinidad before, I saw the cabbage was this big. It was bigger than my head, right? But when you buy here, the cabbage is small, right? And then I asked them, is this cabbage? I didn't even realize it was cabbage. And then they told me, why is it there? Because you keep on peeling at each stage. Every step of the way, every time there's a drop or any handling, you have to peel away the layers and then that becomes waste. What we're trying to do also is to shorten the supply chain, connect the farmers straight to the buyers, similar to what a lot of the panelists here are doing. And we're actually working with them on this one. And if you shorten the supply chain, you can greatly reduce your waste. So that's basically it. Because rather than each step, just imagine from farmer to trading post, to bagsakan, and then to the retailer, and then to the customers. How many steps? It's average around 8 to 10 steps, right? But if you can lower that, shorten the supply chain, then you can drastically reduce waste.
Definitely agree. I mean, we'll probably revisit this this topic on food waste if we have time later on. But I agree, definitely reducing the number of touch points in the supply chain will improve freshness, et cetera, et cetera. So thanks. Now let's ask Keb Cuevas from Tagani. So Keb, what are your observations on the emerging trends in the space? Given what's going on.
So this pandemic has exposed a lot of problems in our agriculture sector, and I definitely agree with my fellow panelists that we need further collaboration and then to shorten the supply chain. And in fact, a lot of researchers in the University of the Philippines would say that in order for us to do this, we have to have marketing modalities such as contract farming and creating more cooperatives to make it more efficient and make it shorter in the supply chain. And that's where Tagani actually comes in. There are a lot of people starting the pandemic, OFWs coming back to the Philippines. They wanted to really go to farming and have a simple life and just become a farmer or an agribusiness entrepreneur. And we feel that kind of opportunity because we help people start their own businesses in agriculture, particularly in farming, and improve their productivity because we understand that being a farmer or an agribusiness entrepreneur, there are a lot of risks attached to it. There is an environmental risk, there is also financial risk. So you need to have an SOP or something that has been tried and tested for you to be able to become a successful entrepreneur in this field. And that's where we come in and we see an opportunity because the government is actually encouraging more people to go into farming as a business. And there are a lot of loans out there. So we see that there should be more farmers and there should be more productive lands, and because lands right now are being changed into villages and commercial areas, so we need to protect those areas to be food secure in the future.
Yeah, out of interest, I mean, you mentioned OFWs. In terms of location, are these farms, the farming kits, are they being deployed within the city or outside city boundaries, or are they being deployed in more provincial areas? What's your observation?
So it's actually very, it's regardless. Some of our clients are in Metro Manila, but most are actually in the nearby Greater Manila area in Cavite, Laguna, and then Bulacan. So, and also in Rizal. So because there are lands that are practically unutilized, and they want to really use this land and become more productive. And we see a lot of trend. Also, a lot of schools are very interested in using their rooftops, become more productive, and use those as an area for production. And actually also a tourist site. They see those kinds of opportunities for their students and also for people to actually learn about agriculture.
That is very interesting because again, bringing back the topic on food waste. Of course, you can optimize the supply chain from more provincial areas, more remote areas to be delivered in mega cities, right? Like Metro Manila. But there's also an opportunity to build like high value crops, plant them and harvest them within city boundaries.
Yes.
Because the distances are is basically closer to the demand areas. So when you harvest, you don't need to store them anywhere because you can just harvest just in time and just deliver just in time. So I think this is an important piece. Although I think, just on my observation based on the deals that I've looked at, this sort of aquaponics or hydroponic farming, they're gravitating towards higher value crops, more basic crops, or of course going to always be traditionally grown, at least in the near term here. So what are the emerging sort of high value crops that are picking up speed, in the space that you're in? And I guess a related question is, is there a tech layer that organizes the demand and supply mechanism for among your farmers so that you can deliver just in time?
Yeah, so to answer the first question, what are the varieties or crops? So most of the time, the leafy greens, and then so those are the the species of kale, the brassicas, and then the lectoca, the lettuce, and also mostly the salad greens. We also see that wine crops such as grapes are gaining traction, and strawberries, because basically these are controlled environment crops. And with regards to other forms of crops, there are also such as microgreens, which are mostly used for also salads and mostly used by restaurants in Metro Manila for high-end restaurants. With regards to the market, yes, we do some form of market aggregation and forecasting in our own algorithm, because in our system, in partnership with those technologies that we have partnered with, we forecast basically how much they could produce, and then from that we use those data in order to project how much can we market this time of the year or this time of the month, so that we could, you know, have a greater communication between our clients in the farmer side and then our clients in the market side. So it makes us a balance out of the supply chain, which is rather small, shorter.
Excellent. That full stack solution, makes a lot of sense. So let's move on to Josh Aragon from Zagana. So Josh, I think your business is interesting, but I'll let you, talk through what your observations are and, how you optimize supply and demand, etc.
Yes, hi Koi. Nice to be here and nice to see everyone here as well. So Zagana is a farm to kitchen platform. We source the produce directly from our local farmers in the Philippines. Our main focus is on the last mile logistics by bringing the 30 minutes convenience to our users. So to establish a food secure Philippines at competitive prices, while also providing better livelihood to our farmers, our solution is to build sustainable distribution network of pack houses from farm to city level. So we have where we're still in the city level phase, where we have our own storages. These are cold storages that we fulfill in the nearby areas or in the nearby cities. So currently the demand is really strong, especially that people want it instant. So we're in the phase of what we call the instant commerce. So this is where people have their smartphones. They tap they tap one of the apps, and then the produce just delivered straight to their house.
So very interesting. Now, this is I think there's a broader trend in e-commerce wherein the fulfillment centers are increasingly moving within the city because of the instantaneous delivery requirement, right? So maybe you can speak to that a little bit, Josh. What are the trends that you're observing, given that you're in the instant sort of demand fulfillment? I mean, are we talking about 24-hour fulfillment or shorter? I mean, what is the radius that like a fulfillment center within a city, how far can it serve to fulfill that requirement?
So we actually went from a traditional e-commerce, like booking your produce and waiting for the next day to deliver it or for another 3 days. So we did the opposite side, where we stock the produce, and when the customer demands for it, we have it on hand and deliver it. So actually the demand creation there is really hard, because you need to have a good forecast of what the demand is. For example, in Quezon City and in Parañaque, both cities has different demand. One city will prefer more high valued crops because there's more income generating citizens there, while the other is more of like frequency. So they buy at a sachet type. So they buy from 500 to 1,000, but their frequency is almost daily. For the other side, it's every other day. So different cities, different barangays, even they have different buying behaviors.
So out of curiosity, how do you then gather information about demand? I mean, I think from a previous presentation, I think you work with like supermarkets. I think that would be an interesting source of information. It's pretty consistent. They know their inventory, etc. But are there other factors that you consider when you forecast demand for your business?
So we actually get industry experts from different merchandisers in the supermarkets, coming from the supermarkets, to get data from that as well. We know actually the data that we have gathered for the past few years. So basically, it's putting it digitally, and as you can see, the demand for offline and online It's just creating that that bridge where people could actually get it more instantly, not just going to the supermarket, but tapping it in your phone.
I see, I see, I see. Okay, so you basically have an app, right? That consumers can sort of order the goods in, and you have industry experts to sort of predict based on the data you have, and I suppose other data sets as well. And that's how you forecast, your
Yes.
inventory,
We're,
etc.
we're actually connected to different apps. So not just our own app, which
Okay,
is the Ghana, but we're part of
okay,
GrabMart, Foodpanda, and all the
okay.
other channels.
Very interesting. Now, I mean, before we move to my next question, I'm just really fascinated that there seems to be natural collaboration among the startups, even in this panel. So maybe we can hear a few things about that. I mean, how do you build off each other? How do you provide value to each other, and how does that overall provide a solution to the end user? I don't know. Anybody can speak if you're collaborating with any of the startups here. Feel free.
I could
I
probably
can
take the lead on that one.
go ahead.
So for us at Agribah, we actually work really closely with Josh and with Pierre, um, helping them when it comes to coordinating for first mile. So for us, what we do is we work really closely with our farming communities, and since Josh and Pierre aggregate that B2C, what Agribah does is we take all of their orders together and we aggregate so that we can fulfill in those metric tons. Yeah, but it's
Cool.
always great, and I think it harkens back to what we talk about in Agribah about Bayanihan, because we can accomplish a lot more if we work together.
Great. Thanks for that. I think Henry was about to say something.
Yeah. So for Agro Digital, we're really focusing more on the on the front end of things, which is really working with farmers and communities. So we do work with our final milers as well, with Josh here and a few other agri-tech companies in terms of
Okay.
supplying the requirements for them. I don't see it as a conflict or as a competition, primarily because the space is so huge. There's actually space for everybody. And the problems are so complex. If in our little nook in the industry we can do some good, right? We can probably take off each other's practices and try to make things a bit better for everyone.
Excellent. Anybody else who wants to share? All right, cool. So I think that's very interesting. I'm glad we sort of have a clearer picture on how you guys collaborate. So now let me take a step back here. This is startups are everywhere in Southeast Asia, right? I think if you guys want to attract VC funding, of course you have to scale within the Philippines, but also you have to be able to compete with entrants from the regions. So I've spoken with a number of like indoor farming companies that are quite large, but in the future maybe a competition to Keb, for example. So I just want to hear your guys' thoughts on what is defensible. I mean, we sort of understand where the value sits right now, matching supply and demand, warehousing, providing support to the farmers so they can become more productive. What do you think are the areas of lasting value that you can defend against new entrants? And more importantly, based on that value proposition, maybe you can even export that and compete in other countries. So I don't know which among you is best placed to answer that, but I would love to hear your thoughts, because I think at the end of the day, it's really VC funding that can help us scale, right? And you have to have a regional view to sort of convince VCs to come in. So any thoughts along those lines would be very appreciated.
So I guess I could start the conversation with that. So on our end, we really focus more on developing technologies in farm inputs. So the dosing technologies, we have something like that allows the farmers to schedule how they can fertigate automatically the fertilizers to their farms. And also when it comes to the branding of the crop, it's also very important. because we can see in the Americas and then in the Europe that a particular commodity becomes popular if it's really branded by the government or really marketed as a whole, with really political, with a political mind, that to really raise the awareness of the people, you need to particularly focus on this crop. So I guess also it comes to play the government support for a particular commodity. And also, yeah, for us in Tagani, what we really focus on is like the seeds, like the breeding, how what seeds should be practically good for all of the Southeast Asia, given the temperature differences and all of those factors that come into consideration. So more of the farm inputs, so that the new entrants, whoever comes into farm franchising, could be, it would be a lot harder for them because we have dominated that area already with regards to, not right now, but in the future, we see that we're going to dominate the input production, the farm inputs area.
Thank you, Kev. Anybody else? I mean, I think farmer relationships is key, right? I mean, because that's very difficult to steal if you're already established.
Yeah.
Maybe some of you can speak to that, and just talk about what the farmers value. You know, maybe Henry or Jojo can speak to that. Would be interesting to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So let me start, right? So definitely the battlefield is actually in the hearts and minds of farmers. You know, technology on agro-digital isn't so fancy. We don't actually have the, you know, we don't have AI yet or stuff like that. It's really basic, it's really record keeping. But the thing is, we're really after adoption of farmers in terms of the technology. Even if you have the fanciest technology and the farmers don't happen to see the value behind it, then obviously your platform is going to die a natural death. So at AgroDigital, we've been focusing a lot on education sessions. It's not even about the technology, it's talking about talking to each other, right? Produce consolidation, talking about demand forecasting, then production forecasting. Is really basic. And this is actually, you know, the type of relationship that, well, this is actually what strengthens the relationship between us and our partner farmers.
I think for us in Agribah, our philosophy when it comes to the technology is that it should be easy for our farmers to adopt. So even if we had like a fancy platform, if the farmer's not going to find use in it or they're not going to be willing to adopt it, it's really hard to win over their hearts. So for us, we really kind of focus on how can we really add value to them. So we really do a lot of like being on the ground with the farmers to see firsthand what are the things that need to be fixed before they can have that steady supply chain for our clients so that they can continuously supply. When it comes back to Koi's question about how do we kind of like be more defensible when it comes to players that are more regional coming in, a lot of the times, I don't know, from our experience, the farmers are really, it's hard to win over their hearts when it comes to the technology, because previously before some other technology companies may have came in and then they had all these high hopes and then it just kind of died out. So they're already skeptical when you first go in there. So for us, it's really more on building that relationship first. So really kind of being on the ground with them, understanding what are the things that need to be developed, what can we help them with, how can we give them additional resources so that they can have better quality goods, or if they need financial assistance. Like for us, we have Agribah Finance. So we help them when it comes to also the payment coming back so that they don't have to wait those terms. So they're more willing to work with large scale enterprises because they're not now waiting 90 days to have a payment back. So they can have continuous cross cycles. So for us, I think what makes us more defensible when it comes to regional players is because we're Filipino and because we're really spending time with them and building those relationships. It's one of those things where it's built on trust, and over time, once you gain that and they see the value of what you're trying to accomplish, they're going to be loyal to you. On the other side of things, for us, on the enterprise side, we've also developed those relationships. So as far as it goes from not just only the farmer side of things, but on the business side or enterprise side, relationships are also very, very important. So building trust with our enterprise clients also shows that, you know, the transactions will run a lot smoother. And as there's more transactions, both sides become more, they trust us more. So gaining that trust over amount of time is kind of really key to being more defensible, because it's going to be a lot harder for regional players to come in, especially if they're really focused on winning the hearts of our farmers, or if they're going to start working on enterprise side, maybe the clients they're going to approach are already our clients. So that's kind of where we're at with that.
Great. I mean, Pierre, Josh, any thoughts on defending the value, building a moat against regional competitors?
You want to go ahead, Josh? I agree, totally agree with Jojo. It's the difference here in especially in emerging markets like ours. We have a lot of smallholder farmers. Some co-ops, 300 farmers. There's some co-ops, 2,000 farmers. Just imagine how many farmers. I think it was born, culturally, regionally, where the government pushed for farm land ownership. But the thing is, it's all small farms, so it's harder to consolidate. So, and that is like what George said. It's the most defensible way to ward off incoming regional players. The relationship with the farmers, from what I understand, co-ops, farmers, they're very loyal to their group. I've gone through working with DA, working with DTI. I understand very well. I'm also a Go Negosyo mentor for both Agri and Department of Trade. So I see that just a co-op level, they're very loyal to each other. And if you can get, like what Jojo said, if you can get their trust, they will accept anything, maybe technology, may it be help, all of that stuff. So I totally agree on the relationship side.
Thanks, Pierre. And maybe Josh, I mean, we talked a lot about farmers. I think you have developing more relationships with the end users, with the consumers. I mean, at the end of the day, a regional player can come in with more money, can compete on a price point basis, right? But what other elements, what other value propositions can you offer that won't be as vulnerable to pricing competition? Any thoughts on that?
Well, of course, when a user buys from us, they look into the quality, the price, and how fast that you can bring the produce to them. So those three aspects is one of our critical aspects that we look into. So creating that channel of sustainable storages or pack houses that we've created is already a moat for us. We actually covered 95% of Metro Manila, that you could have your produce delivered within 30 minutes. And our time is usually 6 a.m. until 7 p.m., depending on the storage time. So in this kind of network, we created this network of storages. After creating this network of storages, we will increase our SKUs or our inventory level. So this one creates more demand and supply. Actually, what we look into as well is not just providing the convenience, but also helping to uplift our fellow farmers. Because right now, we buy directly from the farms, and as they would know, our price is very transparent. You will see our prices in the app itself. So you will know how much we bought it and how much we sold it. So this entails all the logistical costs, all the storage costs, as well as the handling costs. So this one provides them a very transparent view of how we sell. Not unlike with other retail stores that they actually mark up a lot. That's why what Pierre mentioned about the cabbage or the wombok, You get a very big slice of wombok, but when it comes to the retail stores, it's already a small piece. So this one, we try to remove the handling process from the farms direct to our storage, and from our storage direct to our end users. So it's basically a two-step handling.
I see.
And yes, go ahead.
No, just a clarification. Like when you talk about storage, you talk about cold storage, or it's not a standard warehouse, right?
It's not
or am I
yeah, it's
mistaken?
not a standard warehouse. It's basically a cold
Okay.
storage where we have different degrees of temperature, because every produce is very delicate in how you store the produce. And our goal is to keep it as fresh as possible. So we do a lot of R&Ds in order to uh, prolong the shelf life.
Excellent. Now, just doing a quick time check. We're supposed to open for questions at 8:05, so that's 4 minutes from now. But I do have, I think, one important question that I'd love to hear your thoughts on. We've seen what the private sector is doing. It's great, very innovative, like high risk in some cases, but high reward as well, right? Now, if we think about the government, there are some things that only the government can do, and I think you can think of the government as the tide that lifts all the boats, and the boats being all the startups like yourselves. So given the fact that we're in really difficult, economic times right now, government funding has to be prioritized for health, etc. If there's just one thing that you think the government should invest in the agri space, what would that be? And why? Why would that be the main thing that they should invest in? So anybody who has some thoughts there can answer.
I'll take a stab at it. If there's one thing, it's probably to invest in farmer education. Definitely, we cannot rely on the traditional way of doing things. And education as a way of liberating minds, right? A lot of our smallholder farmers are stuck in working with middlemen who take away their produce. Yesterday I was talking to these people, some farmers who sold their eggplant at 50 centavos because they're tied down to these middlemen. They're indebted to these middlemen, right? That is just a sob story. And if we can invest in education, perhaps make our extension workers aware of digital and ways to organize these farming clusters, then our smallholder farmers would happen to have more leverage. And I guess that's the start of something to change the way that we do agriculture in this country.
That resonates with me, because I think education, the return on investment takes time, right? And unfortunately, startups, need quick returns. Otherwise, they'll, lose money to pay their employees, right? So I think supply chain, you can optimize and get quick returns, but education is something, that I think I agree that the government should definitely invest in. How about the rest? Any other thoughts on that?
I'll take a crack at it too. So, if you ask me, is that with our collaboration with the government, they're actually doing a lot of policy making, helping us connecting with the farmers, and also particularly for the DA, connecting the supply side, DTI, connecting the consumer side, right? So, or the SMEs. Straight away, I think the best way at this time, to help really on logistics. Logistics, maybe one of our experiences with in Nueva Vizcaya, Nueva Ecija, I think, the LGU there really support their farmers by providing the logistics, providing the transport for free, and consolidating all of the different farmers. Like we said earlier, in our experience, a lot of the farmers, they deliver small units, small volume, sometimes van, and that drives up logistics costs, 12 pesos, 10 pesos, 12 pesos per kilo, right? But if you can consolidate that, you can drastically bring down 3 to 5 pesos. And if you're a smallholder farmer, your cost of logistics or transport is going to be that much. It's going to be 10 pesos, right? Just to deliver your order from the province going to Metro Manila. But it's not even, actually, if you ask me, it's not even investment. They can just deploy the National Guard or the military with all of their trucks in a certain area, or just a few trucks from the LGU for free, and then bring it down. So that's something that I would love to see. And that's something that's a direct investment, and it directly impacts immediately both the supply side and the demand side. So I think that's something that should be invested in.
Thank you for that, Pierre. How about the rest? If there's one thing that you think the government should put money in, what would it be?
For me, it's the same with what Pierre discussed a while ago. It's farm consolidation and clustering, because this could significantly increase the productivity in the competitiveness of the farmers. One scenario that happened to us was there were a lot of farmers that approached us. They kept on asking that they have 5 tons of mangoes, 10 tons of pineapples. Can they do the bagsakan to us? But if you look into the cost, the logistics cost itself is very high. That's why it's not sustainable in a way that they could ship it weekly or daily to us. So with this farm consolidation, creating this cluster of farmers together, like in producing one crop, they could clean the produce. They could help sort the good and bad of the grades of the produce. And when it's shipped in a crate or a sustainable packaging to our distribution centers, then the shelf life of the produce will last longer. It will be more healthy. It will be more clean and nice to look at. So this is something that I think as an agricultural country, we need to create this, and also as a island, multiple islands, we need to create this farm consolidation so that we will be able to provide more to our fellow Filipinos.
So sorry, let me dwell a little bit on farm consolidation. And you guys know more about this than me. I think to consolidate farms, I mean, some of it has to be done by the private sector because you need access to data, which the government does not necessarily have. So if you sort of parse if you parse consolidation into sort of multiple layers, I mean, are you talking about like a policy to sort of so I don't know what are the motivations of farmers? Can the government really ask them to consolidate? Because that coordination requires data, right? So I'm just trying to, see. I mean, maybe this is going too deep, and I don't want to put anybody on the hot seat. But that insight would be really helpful because I think a guy like me, don't have that much experience, can't really think of it just off the bat, right? So, maybe I'll give maybe 3 seconds if anybody wants to speak to that. Otherwise, we can just move on.
Yeah. So
but
for us,
yeah.
We're actually working with the DA regarding this. So because we have the data, we know what the customers are buying. We know what the produce moves every day or even every week. We could help forecast this to our fellow farmers, let them know what they need to produce, what they need to harvest at this time, and then when they will need to ship it. So that's why we need consolidation hubs as well as better storages, so that we could prolong this kind of produce. We're more of in a pandemic as well as in a disaster country, like typhoons, rains. So we need proper storages that we will be able to keep the produce. And when typhoon happens, at least that we are food secured. We know that we will where we can get the produce and then have it shipped to our cities. And these prices of the produce won't even go up because of the tragedies. It won't. It will be stable. So this entails us to have a more established and sustainable community and cities.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, to Pierre's point, like consolidating the transport and the warehousing, et cetera, would be a big help. Anything else?
Can I add? Can I
Any
add
last
something?
thoughts? Yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree with Josh. Data, information is really needed, to understand, to connect both supply and demand. And if you can do that, it will solve a lot of the problems. The smallholder farmers can organize themselves and see, okay, ito yung demand. This is the demand forecasted in the next few months, di ba? And at the same time, the buyer side, the farmers can show their production. Okay, in 3 months, in 2 months, I'm gonna have this number of tons of tomatoes, and it will also open up opportunities for buyers to sell or upsell other products if they know both the data from both sides. And for the government, if they see this information, the trade, they can create and generate policies that can benefit both the farmer and the consumer. So, and everyone in the supply chain. So data analytics is really important. But of course, before you get there, you have to have the data, right? So the bigger the data, the more insights that you can generate from.
Great.
I just wanted to point out something. Yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so there's a lot of talk on data being what's needed to straighten things out, right? But unfortunately for us in this system, most of the data is actually manual. So it's not stored in anything. I mean, even if, let's say, I cannot claim, even if we removed around 420 tons of goods in the past 3 months, that's just a fraction of the data and consumption data that's actually needed to drive production. There has to be some way so that we can go micro in terms of for each barangay, what is actually the actual consumption. Just so that we can actually forecast what's actually needed for every city and every barangay in this country. Again, it's a huge problem, but we're looking at trying to start piecemeal. Our cooperatives, for instance, will happen to have an understanding of what their members, for instance, are consuming. Right, so we start from a small piece. We try to extrapolate details, right, in terms of consumption data, so that we have the right inputs on what to produce.
Yeah.
Yeah, and go ahead, Pierre. Sorry.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with Henry. The data, although it's small and it's not aggregated, that's something that we want to do on our end. It's a huge task. That's why we're at the onset, we're really all about collaboration. We worked with Jojo and June. We're working with Josh and other agri-tech startups so that we can consolidate the data and information, so that we can share that to the farmers and we can share that also to the government. So you're correct. That's why it's all about collaboration here. The more collaborative we are in the supply chain, like they said initially when I started the conversation earlier, the more collaborative and the more integrated a supply chain is, the more efficiencies that happen. That's our experience also with FMCG. So that's why that's the main difference. Like I said earlier, agriculture supply chain is very traditional, right? So they're not sharing information. Unlike FMCG multinationals, everybody knows everybody. Each transporter knows what the other transporter is moving. The shipping lines know what the other shippers are moving because it's a big supply chain that needs to manage. So that's something that we see as a vision. The more collaborative, the more integrated, then the more insights that we can get from those data there.
Definitely. Like baselining data from the cooperative, etc. I think that's to some extent maybe the Department of Agriculture can help out in sort of just the baselining. But there's also data currency, which I think the startups would be in the best position to step in, because you track production, demand, supply, and then we make sure that coming out of the baseline established by the Department of Agriculture, let's say, it becomes current and useful. I do want to sort of just transition to Q&A, but if any of you have something really urgent to say that you think has to be made right now, please do so. But otherwise, we'll just go with the panels. I think Jojo, you want to say something?
Aside from the things that all of the rest of the panelists mentioned, I think one thing that also needs to be brought up is like global standards. or standardization in terms of like quality when it comes to the produce, so that it's easier for farmers to be able to identify where their crop lies within the standard quality that they're producing, so that it's easier also then for them to be able to supply globally. Because if we want to get bigger contracts, if we want to have our farmers be able to supply larger purchase orders, if it's for export and we focus on that so that we make our farming communities be able to sustain themselves on a larger scale, we really have to focus also on training them about the quality of goods. And that would kind of also harken back to what Josh was saying about making sure that the quality is there before it even leaves the farm, so that there are less layers and less food waste. So I think that's another thing where like the Department of Agriculture could probably help with that in terms of talking with even the startups, because we have all of that information anyway, so that there's some type of standardization in terms of quality, so that farmers know what to expect when it comes to the costing of their goods based on the quality that they're outputting, and what they could actually be able to improve upon in terms of their quality. So I think that's also something that maybe should also be said, is having a standardization guide when it comes to the quality of produce.
Yeah, interesting. And of course, quality standards, goes back to educating the farmers on best practices, right? So it's a infinite loop. So thank you for raising that. Now, let me just spend some time transitioning to the questions, because I think some of this are very relevant. So I think what I'm gonna do is some members of the audience fielded like 4 questions. So what I'm just gonna pull out some sort of common questions, just acknowledge who among the audience asked them, and I hope you forgive me if I paraphrase in the interest of time. So this question is partly derived from Mr. Joel Tan's question and Sheen Melikan's question, and it's about financing. Like, how critical is the problem of access to financing among the farmers? Are they in debt? And is that something that you guys actually try to solve? So maybe 1 or 2 of you can speak to that. I'm sure the rest can have an opportunity as we go through the questions.
Jojo, are you good?
Sure, I don't know if you want. It's up to you.
Okay, so I'll start. Based on what we discussed with the different farmers, yeah, a lot of the farmers are in debt. Actually, in debt with some of the traders. It's a known secret, right? So the traders fund their farming efforts, and then they get like what Henry mentioned earlier, and then they get a big chunk of the revenue. So that's something that, and I'm glad that Jojo is also doing that with their farmers, providing access to finance, so that they can earn more. And that's something also we're doing on our end, using the technology that we have to reduce the risk for lenders, because there are 2 sides. There's the lenders, there's also the farmers, right? So to reduce the risk of the lenders, we allow them access to see movement of the goods and for the farm itself, so that they're gonna know that okay, there's really business there. It's a real invoice, things like that, and then they can now fund that. So that's something that we're doing, similar to what Jojo is also doing, but mostly working with different lending facilities and giving them access to the information that they need to help fund. Because most of the lenders that we worked with is that they don't know, right? That's why they feel like agri is a very risky venture. I forgot, there was a study that our Philippine banks are supposed to have X percentage of lending for farmers, but I think they're not even scratching the surface, right? Because they know that lending to farmers is a very highly risky venture. So, and that's what we want to do, to provide that information to de-risk the lending, so that in any supply chain, finance is really part of it, right? Because the enterprise, that what Jojo said, you need 3 months, right? And then, or 1 month. But on the farmer side, they want it cash. diba? So those are the things that you need to meet, and only supply chain finance, trade finance can do that.
I agree with everything that Pierre had said. Also on our end though, sometimes the farmers just need an additional loan because they need to add additional crops, so they need it for their seeds or their inputs. That's another way where, because of the data, because we mitigate the risk for the farmers, they're eligible for loans. But what loans do they pick? What financial partner are they gonna go with? They don't really know, so they just choose one at random. But for us, what we can do for them is also help them by showing them the comparison of what are the terms of each, so that they can make a better decision as to what financial partner that they would be able to go with, while also helping that financial institution mitigate their risks, because they can see through our platform what the type of output is for that particular farmer. So
Thanks for that, Jojo. I just want to go back to what Pierre was saying about supply chain financing. One emergent trend is like deep tier financing for agri, and what that means is essentially there's a sort of a multinational that buys, basically consolidated agri. So it's important to consolidate supply and demand to make this work, right? But because that large company has a strong balance sheet, banks are comfortable lending down the value chain as long as this entity is able to guarantee a percentage of the loan of their sort of secondary or primary suppliers. So my question is, I mean, you obviously are in that space. I mean, how ready is the infrastructure in terms of banking and sort of like just customer knowledge about who's creditworthy and who's not? I mean, where are we in sort of realizing the potential of trade financing, deep tier financing, in your view? And I would really appreciate any inputs you have on that.
Trade finance and supply chain finance. It's very, we're very familiar with that on the FMCG space, right? So we can get loans, we can get our invoice finance because our principals are Nestle, Unilever, Procter and Gamble, right? But for others, especially on the farming side, I'm not yet familiar on any strong trade finance wherein the guarantor or they call it the anchor account. They call it the anchor account is doing that. I would assume some of the large supermarkets might be doing it, but I haven't seen it yet in the agri space because like what I said, agriculture is a very risky business, and that's why it's not yet flourished. But we believe that if you de-risk, if you provide the data, provide the information, like what Josh was saying earlier, all of this information, and then share it into to the farmers and then to the financiers, the lenders, it will drastically reduce the risk for them to lend. And in lending, it's all about risk, right? It's all about risk. As much as possible, even if you have a smaller percentage, you want it to get you want it paid back, right? And the risk of losing for a small percentage is very high. So that's why as of now, if you ask me directly, I don't think it's ready in the agri space. There's a lot of small lending initiatives, and that's something that we want to also solve that problem more on a bigger scale. I know even the government banks are a little hesitant to lend. Just imagine, right? So they're hesitant to lend to farmers. So that says a lot, right? But because they have the same amount of risk that the other private banks have. So that's something that we're working on, and hopefully we can bring that type of financing, large-scale financing, from our experience in the FMCG space and multinational space.
Fantastic. Any last thoughts on this topic? Yeah, go, Henry. Quick
just wanted
few
to
words.
say, right? So banks haven't actually been lending to farmers, even if there's a law that asks them to lend farmers, right? So they'd rather pay the penalties associated with that, no, rather than lending to farmers. So in any case, on our end, we're trying to organize farmers into clusters, into organized, cooperatives or associations, because it's easier to deal with them as a group. If there is group financing, then it's an easier proposition to say, if there's a PO or an invoice that they need to fulfill, the group can actually handle that or fulfill that as a unit. So that drastically reduces the risk of default.
Great. I mean, we can dive deeper into this, but let me just get one more question from the pool. And I think this is from DTI. So I'm really grateful that they spent time. I think this is attorney Carla Grepo from DTA FTSC. So basically, she's asking if there are other gaps that DTI can support you guys. I think, we have one government agency here that's, really interested to help you guys out. Maybe you can share your thoughts there.
I can.
Sorry. So let me be more specific. So aside from, so it's like ease of doing business issues, maybe you can speak to that, or any other elements of like being a startup and flourishing in the Philippines that you think they can step in and help you guys out.
I actually answered this question in the chat itself, but for us, especially since we're an agri-tech startup, even when we're registering our business with SEC, you have to kind of choose where you land on that spectrum, because there's no category for an agriculture technology firm. So for us, we're not necessarily agriculture, so we don't get any of those benefits that the farmers get, but yet we're helping them. And so we're more on the technology side. So we had to put like IT services, which doesn't necessarily even tell you exactly what we do as a business. And then from that SEC registration, all the other registrations trickle down from that. And every step of the way has an implication. So I think for us, when it comes to that ease of doing business, it should be that there should be a category so that we can also be helped in terms of like tax incentives and things, because we're helping a sector that actually needs help. So in terms of our business being able to also thrive, to be able to help them, there should also be some different ways in which each of those individual government agencies should be helping agriculture technology startups, so that it's easier for new ones to actually start. Because it's never going to be just, for example, us on the panel are the only agriculture technology startups. We need to have more, because there's so many more farmers and there's so much to do that, there needs to be more of us. So it should be easier for us to be able to actually start our businesses to begin with.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think categorization is fundamental to accessing some basic like subsidies or government support, right? So thank you for raising that. Any last thoughts? I mean, I think we need to wrap this up. So we're sort of 4 minutes beyond schedule, but I mean, this has been a very interesting exchange. So any final thoughts that you guys want to share with our audience, who's both from private sector and the government, before we close?
Yeah, so we're actually working with DTI for their DTI National Food Fair, or their DTI Bagsakan. It's selling those byproducts. For example, those strawberries that will be that's already out of the shelf life. They turn it into jam or a puree. So these items we're helping them sell. We're getting from their processing plants, and then help sell those produce as well.
Yeah,
Thank
can
you.
I add also on the DTI end?
Yeah, sorry. I just want to mention that James, because it's so hard to keep track of all the screens, but I think James basically Maine wants us to just continue with the Q&A. So I'd like to request Goldie or Joseph to step in when if we're pushing this too far. But let's just continue. So Pierre, please.
Yeah, DTI is actually doing a lot from because I work closely with them. On the incentives end, I think there's a startup act that covered it. Aside from the BMBE, if you're business, a micro business, less than 3 million, you can get tax incentives. That's one. And I think, but there's a very interesting when we had a meeting with all of the different, vegetable e-commerce, agri e-commerce, there's hosted by DTI. One of them asked if DTI can do a more fun in the Philippines strategy, like what DOT, the Department of Tourism, did. So more on pushing e-commerce, more on pushing online selling to be a normal thing, to encourage a lot more consumers to go online. So I think that's something that DTI can know, but that's something that already we shared. So hopefully, and then they're interested to do that. So because e-commerce really and online was going to be the new normal. So I think that's where we are at right now.
Yeah. So I just want to acknowledge Asek Lere Panes from the Department of Agriculture, who is joining us. So excellent. Thank you for your time. And feel free to just comment on the chat if you want to send a message to the panelists. Sorry, I think I interrupted you, Pierre. Were you about to close off or say something else, or let me just move to? Okay.
It's just
So I have an interesting question here. So again, Joseph, step in if I missed too much of your questions. But one question here is, how do you navigate around the traditional players like the traders, wholesalers, and the agri cartel? How do you safeguard your own sort of health and safety and security? So what are the best practices there? I mean, what is the best approach? You don't want to contend with them head first, right? There must be a win-win scenario, or is there any comments there?
Anyway, just a practical answer to it is, at least at this point, we make sure that we don't actually butt heads with them at the moment. We're the thing is, for as long as we don't actually dabble with their channels, right, or they see ourselves as a direct competitor, then we're all right. But I guess there's also a point wherein we are a bit conscious in terms of the markets that we do go into. Yeah. If let's say there are markets that are controlled by certain individuals, then an option there is actually you make your own and let the market decide.
Anybody else who wants to comment on their experience?
When we first started, it was really kind of a thing where it was something to be considered, especially because when you're dealing with large-scale enterprise clients and you're aggregating in a large level in terms of like metric tonnage, you really have to be either discreet or very picky into like what areas you're going to go into, because there may already be a heavy player there and you might be taking on their territory. I think for us also, it harkens back to collaborating and kind of understanding what the role of that big player is inside the community itself, because sometimes middlemen are actually not all bad. Some of them are actually like helping those farmers finance in terms of trade financing, or some of them are actually the ones providing the inputs. So you have to kind of also determine if that big player is a good guy or not. But I think it kind of boils down to also being more of an understanding, like really the concept of who you're dealing with. Are they also known to be dangerous, or is it another way you could actually collaborate? Because maybe they're not so bad as everyone thinks they are. So I think it's pick and choose. Really, you have to really kind of determine and really analyze the situation before entering. But yeah, it's definitely something, especially for first mile players that are really on the ground with the farmers, to really consider. Are you going to play nicely with this, or are you going to find additional markets that can also supply?
Thank you. I guess, one way to figure out whether this middleman is adding value or not, right? Are they perpetuating the inefficiency that you're trying to solve? And then there's, in that case, there's no other way than to contend with them directly, right? But if they add value in some other way, then of course collaboration makes sense. Maybe one more comment if you have any, and then we'll switch to another question from the group. Okay, so I think no further comments. So I have a question from Asik Leray. Do you also intervene with farmers as far as the production to ensure quality standard and food safety? I think we touched on this earlier, Jojo. What policy intervention do you need from the Department of Agriculture to support you in this work? So maybe Jojo, you can start off, and then anybody else can jump in.
Sure. So when it comes to the Department of Agriculture, we actually work really closely with them, especially when it comes to showing our farmers like proper ways to do post-harvest processing. So not even just, and it's also something that we do with our clients. So for example, if we are working on a contract growing, what we do is we require our clients to go visit the farms that are going to be supporting them. And they're actually the ones that are training the farmers on the quality they're expecting from them. So even before they start sending their goods off to the client, they already know what quality they're supposed to be looking for and what are the expectations of the client. And the client also then has that opportunity to put faces to the produce that they're already accepting. So it's kind of also building that trust and relationship between them directly, while also helping with the quality. Another thing that we do when it comes to, for example, seaweed, we actually work closely with BFAR to do free training for our farmers. So our seaweed farmers, our coastal seaweed farmers, actually, BFAR will actually go out there to our communities for free and do trainings with them so that they can have additional understanding of maybe added ways of processing their seaweed to have a higher quality. And when there's a higher quality, they get a higher price. So that's actually to their benefit. And it doesn't cost them anything. So yeah, for us, actually, the Department of Agriculture really works closely with us when it comes to trainings. We just have to actually reach out to them and ask them if they're able to do it on a regional level.
Cool. So maybe one thing we can do is, Jojo, if you can mention who is your contact in DA, so that just to place yourself within that organization. I don't know if you have a specific name, but might be worth mentioning.
Well, one of our mentors and somebody that we work really closely with is actually Yusuf Lavinia from High Value Crops.
Okay.
And that's because we also supply flour. So when you look at agriculture, it's not just fruits and vegetables. It can be agricultural raw materials. That could be like seaweed or bamboo and things along those lines. And those farmers also need support as well. So I think maybe also looking at agriculture as a whole, because there are so many different types of crops aside from the ones that we consume.
Thank you, Jojo. I mean, how about the rest? Any thoughts on quality standards, food safety? Just improving the quality of the produce.
So actually in policy side, there is a Bureau of Agricultural and Fisheries Product Standards under the Department of Agriculture. And we have this program with the DAATI, the Agricultural Training Institute, called the Digital Farmers Program, wherein we teach farmers on how to actually attain these programs or these standards. So I think it's more of letting the farmers know, or really encouraging the cooperatives or empowering the cooperatives to really know the standards and bringing more equipment or subsidizing the farm input so that they could attain these standards as well. It's really more on collaborating with farmers and going to the ground and being more with the farmers and training them on these standards, because there are already standards with regards to any form of either primary or secondary. So it's more of attaining those standards. And also with the market, they have different standards as well.
So question there, Kev. Is your training available online? And maybe a follow-up question to our panelists who interface directly with the farmers: are online like modules useful at all in terms of training? So maybe Kev, just tie off your answer if your modules are online first.
Yeah, good question about the modules. So not necessarily everyone is well versed with online modules.
Okay.
So we kind of do some way right now on a blended learning. So we are in the process of creating books for them to read, and also a partnership with a telecommunications company so that we could do a blended type of text messages so that they could be updated about the weather or something that is very important for them. So it's more of, for us, it's right now in the pandemic, it's creating more books for them to read. But again, it's also a problem. So it's kind of a really hard, it's a challenging way, but we're kind of trying to figure out how we could, help them attain those standards. But again, it's a challenge. I can't have a specific answer, but it's still a challenge for us.
Sure, but maybe, I don't know, Henry, you have experience there.
Yeah. So we're connected with API as well. So that's a training arm for the DA. And although we are working on content to be consumed online, again, as a personal preference, nothing beats face-to-face discussion with farmers, especially if you're talking about procedures, trying, the practical way of doing things, of going through, steps in terms of quality. They won't exactly read, but they will listen if they see something in front of them. And that's the easiest way for them to actually learn.
So more video and audio, local language.
Probably more video at the very least. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, more videos.
Yeah. Okay. Any additional comments? Maybe Pierre, Josh, or I guess you guys are happy. I mean, I think we've discussed this quite a bit. So just shifting gears here a bit, more private sector question. How do you acquire customers? And can you speak to, I guess the growth of like households who are increasingly ordering online, and who among your clientele are more like sort of B2B, and therefore it's easier to aggregate because their demand is larger. Maybe you guys can speak to that.
So
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay.
So we actually started doing B2B for Zagana.
Okay.
We started back in December, January of this year. And COVID actually struck. So everyone's on lockdown, and we shifted overnight to going to B2C because our first phase was creating this volume. So we want to target those restaurants first. But eventually, because of the lockdown, we got the volume immediately in overnight. And this one we were able to get, in line with the question a while ago, we were able to get the specifications of the restaurants, what needs to be delivered, what are the right cuts, the right texture. So with all these informations, we were able to get back to the farmers and tell them this is what we need. This is what the specifications that needs for us to deliver to our clients. So we were able to provide quality produce to our end users now. And I think they are very happy. That's why we're growing in multiple folds, especially now in the MECQ. Overnight again, our orders actually doubled and tripled.
And just out of curiosity, what do you think will stick post pandemic, post lockdown? I mean, will people gravitate towards like supermarkets again for fresh produce? I mean, Of course, for fresh meat, for fish, it's always different to see the actual eyes of the fish, whether it's fresh or not. But in terms of produce, do you see some of that shifting permanently through online deliveries?
Definitely. Actually, it takes 21 days to make it a habit. So I think we're
Okay.
past that stage. And people orders from us every other day now, as we will know that from the data points that we get. And in terms of quality, if they see it as very good, it's well picked or selected, then they will trust our pickers now because we have our own quality assurance officers in every storage
Okay.
that we have. So in inbound, they actually check the produce before it gets into the storage, and from outbound, they recheck it again. So this quality, it's more assured rather than you yourself going to the supermarket, falling in line, picking the produce there, and going to the heavy traffics right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think being home based is definitely going to be a habit. The way things are going right now. All right. Any further thoughts? What I'd like to do is just maybe ask Joseph if I missed any key questions, because I tried to scroll up and down. But if you can jump in and just field a few more questions that you think are pertinent.
Thank you very much, Koi. We know that this is a very wicked problem and that there are no silver bullets. We've gotten a lot of questions from the audience, and I'm just going to try and consolidate some of them so that we can tackle a few of them at once, right? So, one of the questions is really in terms of as individuals or collectively, are you able, as startups representing the agri-tech community, able to be a voice for the farmers, advocates for the landless farmers, and helping them achieve their needs in terms of standing up for them with the government, with the private sector, and just raising issues with us as the general public? Anyone?
So I think I can answer that. As a person, I am very vocal about the policies of the government. Picking up from my previous job as a reporter, I've formed this mindset that we should always look at the farmer side, how we really improve their quality of life. So you will see that most of the posts of Tagani are somewhat political sometimes, and we try to create an awareness, and we try to replicate the kinds of say fact checking, because something that's very important in agriculture sector right now is fact checking some gardening tricks, or even in the market, making sure that these standards are well known to the people, that something is just the use of face masks as seedling bags is it's not good, and it's been trending for the past weeks, and we were the first ones to really fact check that, because the medical community has been silent about it. So as agriculturists, as professionals, we think that it's very important for us to stand up for the agriculture sector, especially the farmers, because they're the ones who don't have the voice. They don't have social media accounts to voice out their opinion. So we voice them out, and especially that I work closely with extension workers. Whenever they have problems or something that they want to voice out, at Tagani, we try to be that voice, and we use social media to really ripple that out.
Wonderful, thank you. Anyone else?
On our end, because our group is really working closely with government units, we share whatever we learned or feedback from farmers, feedback from co-ops. We share that to the government units that we're working with. So also, as our association as a supply chain, especially during the time, just an example, just during the time of COVID, everybody knows lockdown happened. It was very hard to bring the goods from the farmer, and everybody experienced that here. So what we did in the association, in the supply chain association, we worked closely with PNP, IATF, NEDA, to create that to formulate that rules so that we can allow we call it the unhampered movement of goods, and with our partners we actually relay that benefit. So we help them get the necessary permits. We help them get from both DTI and from DA and from DICT for the rapid pass, because and then relay to them any problems that's being experienced on the ground by our partners, especially like for example Agraba. They had some issues bringing some goods from Bicol, so we help them facilitate and relay that to the IATF. Okay, so this farmer is having problems bringing their goods. Can someone call them? So things like that. So it's really creating that perfect relationship with and close collaboration with the government. I honestly feel like a more collaborative approach, a more working together approach with the government will be more fruitful. And that's something that we did as a group, bring the voice on in behalf of the farmers that had issues before. So and we're gonna push that forward also in any other aspect that is needed to empower more the farmers.
Excellent. Thank you. I have another question if no one else has anything to add.
I think Jojo.
I agree with Pierre on all of those things because we really did have some problems when it came to the transporting, and we knew that even with all of the resources that we were getting in terms of help, it must be even harder for those farmers to be able to move their goods if we already had resources and we're already having big problems. So I agree, it's a lot having to do with the collaborating, especially with the government units, so that situations like moving through checkpoints could be resolved quicker. Because if it takes a long time, then that also affects the quality of the goods when it reaches the endpoint. So yeah, I think when it comes to that, in terms of collaborating, especially more collaborating with the associated government services, really is something that's a benefit.
Excellent. I'd like to ask another question in terms of looking forward, right? So beyond the local market, are there undertapped opportunities for our farming and agri-tech products so that in the lines of, for example, post-processed goods or even for export, so that we can truly be a more pandemic-proof agricultural sector?
I think to answer your question on that one, there are so many opportunities when it comes to export market. It's just having to get our farmers to be able to be export ready is kind of the biggest thing, because right now we're just struggling with being able to help, maintain food security in our own country. But when it comes to other countries that have needs, I think our farmers could actually supply, and then that could also increase their stability in terms of their incomes as well. So I mean, we used to be big players when it came to agriculture back in the day. And then all of a sudden, a lot of things happened where now we're kind of like struggling a bit. And I think the pandemic's kind of highlighting all of these things that we should be addressing so we can get back there to make that agriculture sector great again. I think exports definitely, there's so many untapped opportunities. And when it comes to large scale clients, they're expecting global quality. So we need to help get our farmers there to be able to win those types of purchase orders.
Anyone else? Any good tips for us investors where we should be putting our money for the agri-tech sector? Besides you guys, of course.
It's actually building more cold storages. Right now, the cold storages in Manila, it's already at 90% capacity, because of course in retail side the restaurants are not moving, so all the chicken joys and the other meats are just left there. So they need someone to help unload all those stuff, as well as the other produce. If you want to have a longer shelf life, then put it on a proper storage. So for us, it on our side, it's investing on more cold storages in Metro Manila, as well as creating a big consolidation hub where from farm consolidation goes to the cold storage, and from those cold storage goes to our distribution channels.
Fantastic. We have a lot of other questions in the Q&A and in the chat. Unfortunately, we don't have an infinite amount of time. I want to say thank you to all our panelists for coming forward. We know that we were tackling a very large challenge when we took on this panel discussion. And as mentioned earlier, this is a wicked problem. We're not promising any silver bullets, but we are hoping that this conversation becomes, as we've been going with the theme of the day, a collaborative step forward for everyone. I'd like to give the panelists one last chance to share their thoughts, and then I'll pass the mic to Goldie to share some of the other things that we're doing here at Maine. And so I open the floor to you guys for your final words. Let's start with Henry.
Alphabetical. All right. So definitely we're working with farmers to get them organized, because we firmly believe that organized farmers is actually the strength and backbone of our agriculture sector. We empower them through education by organizing themselves and ensuring that they can synchronize production. That's the best way to actually take on or tackle on the opportunities. Like, for instance, what you said earlier on the export sector, you can't even fix our own problems, much more try to export of a certain quality that's required, right? So again, everything revolves in education, and that's basically what we're gunning for to affect the change in this system.
Thank you. I'm just gonna go in the order it's on my screen. Jojo.
I think for us, it's really, we want you guys to be able to be more aware of where your food is coming from and the importance of agriculture to your daily lives. From the shirt you put on to the toothpaste that you use to brush your teeth, agriculture makes a really important part of those products that you're using. So just be more aware, and also if you want to try to dabble in it, try growing your own vegetables. I mean, if anything, there's a lot of like plantitas and plantitos out there right now. I think that's kind of one of those trends. But anything to get you guys into being more involved in agriculture is something that we're always advocating for. So please try farming. It is actually a lot of fun.
Wonderful. And Pierre?
Yeah, I truly believe that agriculture will, like what Sekdar said, agriculture is the avenue for us to get out of the predicament we are in right now, specifically the pandemic. He mentioned that the growth of the sector is actually below 1% for the past 2 years. Just imagine the contribution to GDP is way low, and there's a lot of factors that contributed to that. But I know it's a risky venture in agriculture, but an investment in cold storage, cold chain actually would be a good investment. Farming practices, any investment to improve agriculture is really going to affect positively our economy, our country. It can uplift more people out of poverty, and I truly believe that more focus on agriculture, especially here. My thoughts is that it's we're already down here, so it's all the way up. So the opportunities are really good. We're not even dabbling export yet. We're still trying to figure out how food security for us. Just imagine the Philippines is in a perfect situation, perfect position to be exporters strategically, and also productivity. So that's something that I truly believe in, that agriculture will help us push forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Keb?
So for us at Tagani, what we really advocate for is, helping people to create more farms. In the Philippines, we have 10 million hectares of agricultural land, but 2 in every 3 hectares are underutilized or unused. So we see this as an opportunity to really go into agriculture and use these resources for us to really improve our productivity, because there's a lot of opportunity here in our country. We have natural resources to actually use all of those and become back to as a great nation for agriculture again. So if you want to be part of the agriculture sector, primarily in the production sector, you may want to collaborate with us and start people and help people start their own farms, because I believe it's really more of establishing more quality farms and helping more people to go into that sector. Because again, agriculture, it might be risky for some, but still a commercial business, and it's a profitable business at the end of the day.
Wonderful. And Josh.
So COVID-19 actually disrupted the industry, almost all the industry here. So basically, it showed, it fast tracked what industry would survive and what would not. And I will say that we have to adapt quickly as possible. Like for this, for Zagana alone, shifting from B2B to B2C overnight is one of the most drastically thing that happened to us. So all the what we've learned from before, we've actually tried to relearn again. So it's something that we have to change as quickly as possible. And for us, it's providing convenience to our consumers, a 30-minute delivery. So now we're in the stage of the instant commerce, and provide the satisfaction of the convenience as well as the quality produce. And hopefully we'll be able to create export quality produce from our farms. And that will really help us really grow as an agriculture country.
Beautiful. And before we end the evening, I'd like to pass the mic to Goldie so she can share with you some of the other great initiatives we're doing here at Manila Angel Investors Network to try and make a real impact in helping the Philippines bounce back.
Thank you,
Goldie?
Joseph. Um, Thank you to all our founders here tonight, to all our attendees. When we talk about agriculture, there's so much impact that can be realized. And what I've learned from you guys today is that collaboration is very crucial. Impact is really at the heart of what Maine prioritizes. And one of the ways we're able to do that, and I'd like to recognize our partners who are here tonight, Miss Marie Torres from Investing in Women, is our Gender Lens investing initiative, right? So it's crucial to back more women-led businesses so we can achieve the gains of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So amazing founders like Jojo here right now need further support to be able to grow and scale solutions, not just for the final market, but to have sustainable ways to deliver these solutions across the value chain. So that was a long-winded explanation of the impact story, but if you are a women-led business, please reach out to us if you want to pitch to Maine. We also have support mechanisms for you to help you with your enterprise. If you are also with us in the movement to back great businesses, like the businesses here and other great enterprises here in the Philippines, the Manila Angel Investors Network is composed of a committed group of investors that come from across a broad range of sectors, not only in business, but also in development and other sectors. So if this is of interest to you and you're actually interested to invest in startups as an asset class, please reach out to us. Our website is www.maine.ph, or reach out to us at info@main.ph or reach out to me at goldie@main.ph. So thanks, everyone. Have a great evening. Thank you so much to our panelists here today. We learned tons from you.
Thank you to everyone. We're going to be signing off. I will be staying back for a moment to handle any chat questions if people want to follow up. But I think we can officially declare this evening adjourned.